Hey everybody, and welcome back to Let's Play Super Meat Boy, another Super Meat World edition. So today we're playing a user-created chapter called Remnants. This was originally released in the first Super Meat World update, so the one that came out on April 1st, which also explains why I'm still stuck here using Super Potato Boy. Not that this is anything but a purely aesthetic difference, but you know, I'm digressing right now already. These levels were created by a guy named Cove92, and I really have got to commend him, or hand it to him. Because of the three levels, or the three user-created worlds that I've Let's Played so far, so Paradise Lost, Starlight, and this one, this is by far my favorite. And I think the last one I did, Starlight, really left a bad taste in my mouth. I had a lot of complaints about how I felt like those levels were just designed to be as tough as possible, and there wasn't really a great eye towards level design when they were created, or particularly a great eye towards game design. The frustration factor on those was way too high. And coming from someone who, not only beat, but had to record himself beating the entirety of Super Meat Boy, a game that's already frustrating, my threshold for that is pretty high, so that's saying something when I'm complaining about that. These levels don't rely on a frustrating level of difficulty. The challenge, I'd say, is about in line with maybe the levels in The End, or maybe Cotton Alley, but like the easier levels in Cotton Alley. And if you remember when, way back in October, when I released my Let's Play of the End level, so Chapter 6 in the Light World, I was kind of, in love with the game, for lack of a better term, particularly those levels. I thought they were really well designed, and the difficulty was perfect. Not too punishing, but also it required the use of all of the skills that you'd acquired to that point in the game. This is much the same as that. You're not going to have to deal with very many pixel-perfect jumps, which was a huge complaint that I had with Starlight. And frankly, the more I think about it, the more I think having like really unforgiving jumps, it's kind of just lazy game design. It's I can't think creatively of how to design poor obstacles, or I'm not going to put in the effort to think creatively about how to design obstacles. So I'm just going to make this as tough as possible. Coincidentally, the same reason I don't like and will never Let's Play I Wanna Be the Guy. Yeah, but these levels more, I like the way the creator described them, actually, where he said, like, levels aren't too challenging, but they don't rely on pixel-perfect jumps, but you need platforming IQ to beat them. And, I'd say that's an apt description. Most of the challenge with beating these levels is not actually executing what you're supposed to do, it's actually conceptualizing what you're supposed to do. And I think that's kind of the mark of a good level designer when it comes to Super Meat Boy. So, I've been gushing for the last 2.5 minutes, but, kudos to you, Cave92. These are fantastic levels, and I hope that everybody's enjoying them as much as I did. And I hope you come out with some more stuff, if, you're watching this, on the off chance you're watching this. I was pleased today, actually, when I signed into Super Meat Boy and saw that there had been an update. So it looks like they're going to support Super Meat World pretty well. The chapter released today was The Passenger, a kind of a prolific level designer for Super Meat Boy, and also friend of a friend, Rock Lee Smile. So I'm looking forward to playing those, and of course, having a video up, provided that the challenge level is not too high. I'm optimistic, because I know that Rock Lee Smile's been involved with the development of Super Meat Boy levels since Dev Mode was kind of discovered in the Steam edition. So I'm hoping that they're going to rely more on good mechanics as opposed to just, punishing difficulty. And again, I gotta say, as someone who beat the entirety of the game on camera, it's not that I suck at the game, even though, after a couple months off, I kind of do. I just think that, maybe there's two schools of thought with Super Meat Boy. There's a school of thought that, like, oh, this game's super hardcore, it needs to be punishing. I think it does benefit from being difficult, but not difficult for the sake of being difficult. The point is that, with good design, things should be challenging, but they shouldn't be overly frustrating. Obviously, there's a certain frustration level in Super Meat Boy, but for the most part, it should be fun. Let's put it this way: I should never feel like I want to quit when I'm playing the game, considering all the other levels I've beaten thus far in my Super Meat Boy career. Here's looking at you, Starlight. And I know I'm harping on Starlight a lot, but I digress. These are fantastic levels. I'll point out there actually are a few that are quite difficult and took me a long time, but for comparison's sake, My raw recording for beating the 20 levels in Starlight was actually close to 2 hours. My raw recording for beating the levels here was only about, I think it was around 40 minutes, which is still quite long. And actually, one of the things I wanted to mention is that the levels in this chapter, in Remnants, are quite long, and that's one of the things I like. One of the similarities it has with the levels in the end, or Chapter 6 in the Light World, is that those levels are long as well. And those are the kind of levels that I like in Super Meat Boy. They require extended concentration. I'd rather a long, medium challenging level than a short, incredibly challenging level. I feel like the medium long level is more rewarding in the end. This is probably, for me, the hardest level in this chapter, even though it comes relatively early on, and then the solution is relatively easy to spot. You've got to be pretty much perfect with all those jumps on the over the saws. And actually, the first time I beat this level in my practice run, I took those disappearing blocks there and back. So I made sure on the way there to only touch 1 out of the 3, and on the first way back to only touch 1 out of the 3, and then hit all of the only remaining blocks on my way back to get to Bandage Girl. And that was, well, I don't need to tell you, it was a pain in the ass, but the solution that I've found there is actually a lot easier, of jumping over the saws at the beginning, and then just taking the disappearing blocks back. And, you know, these levels that kind of come around in the middle are actually pretty easy by my standards. You'll see a little bit of editing, and as someone pointed out, some of these videos can get a little hilarious because, you know, I'll show my original attempt, and then I'll just go straight to my winning attempt, and it'll go from, like, all the saws being spotless to all the saws being covered in blood. But there actually are a few, and I think I've already passed a couple of them, but there's a few levels in here where I actually beat them on the first try, and you can see me kind of jumping around like crazy on the platform. For whatever reason, I still get the glitch where whenever I'm standing on platforms, they cause me to move all insane-like, so I like to keep moving as much as possible. It makes me feel like I'm in control of my own demise, even if I can't avoid it. This is one of the, I wouldn't say it's one of the harder levels in the game, but it's one of the longer levels in the game. Well, not in the game, I suppose, but in this set of user-created chapters, user-created levels. So yeah, some of these levels are going to run you, you know, upwards of 40 seconds to a minute. It depends. These levels kind of reward being pensive and deliberate in your jumps. I mentioned during Paradise Lost that I thought a lot of the levels were built for speedrunning. I feel like this is not the case with respect to these levels. I feel like these ones are much more about taking your time. At least they are for me. That greatly improves my results of these levels. And that's not the case for every level. Sometimes, or some other worlds, it's actually a lot easier to go as fast as you can, and that's fine. I'm into those levels too. This is what I mean when I say this is an example of a level with really good design. That was a stupid death, and we'll probably see another stupid death in a similar fashion, but there's in particular one jump on here that I really like that I hope to be able to show you in about 15 seconds. I want to point out in the interim that I really like the aesthetics on these levels. It seems like a lot of thought went into that, and it's really in keeping with the original aesthetics of Super Meat Boy that when it came out, which is, always welcome with me. I really like, this is what I was going to refer to, I really like this jump right here that looks impossible, but if you just give it a shot, then you'll find more often than not that you actually make that pretty easily. And one of the things that's cool about these levels is that there's kind of alternate paths. So I'm going to take the left path here because it's much easier, but I think I could, in theory, take that right path and do a wall jump and then go back through those saws where I started at, and then drop down through this way. But I took the much easier way. I also really like this level, which quite clearly only has one solution, but this is what I mean by relatively perfect design. This is a level that looks a lot harder than it is because, the saws are relatively exposed. But really, if you just follow your momentum after that first jump, there's almost no way that you can go wrong unless you kind of overthink it, and that's a good thing. So on these levels, again, there's more moving platforms, and those are kind of a crapshoot for me. But, I'll work around it, and then eventually I'll get to the top, and we'll be able to see the rest of the level. And here we go. So, this is another level that's going to run you around, 45 seconds to a minute, but it's another good one. There's really only a few levels in this pack that I didn't like, and this is not one of those levels. The levels at the end I find, I wouldn't say they get too difficult, but they're more difficult. There's more frustration there. I really like the ones the early to mid part of this chapter. One of the things that I feel makes this chapter a lot better than the other two, and I'm sorry if this sounds kind of shallow or even kind of an excuse for my shoddy ability when it comes to the game, is the fact that it doesn't have missile launchers, or in particular, those homing missile launchers that shoot out tiny missiles when they land. I'm not going to go as far as to say that those are a crutch when it comes to making a level more challenging or difficult, but certainly I think that those are by far the most frustration-inducing obstacles that you can put into the game. So I'm glad when those are used sparingly as opposed to more frequently, as they were, you know, pretty much ad nauseum in Starlight. But that's not saying much, because ad nauseum when it comes to those is like 2 levels with them in it. Now this part is actually more difficult than it looks, much more difficult than it looks. You have to first get the key, and then you have to come back down as well, but because of the fact that there's a saw kind of at the rotation center of this saw, I don't even know what I would call it, this saw circle that it's making on its path, you can't just wait there, and that would make your jump a lot easier, make your path a lot easier, let's put it that way. So you've kind of got to do everything at once. And actually, I take my time here. I'm a little bit pensive and thoughtful and careful about when I make this jump, but I make it at a really poor time, and I probably, more often than not, would have died in that situation, but I guess I got kind of lucky there. This is a level that maybe is the only level I can think of in the chapter that has one of those jumps where you have to be absolutely fucking perfect. And this one took me forever to figure out, but I actually, I get it on my first try here. Not the first time I played through the level, but the first time I actually got far enough to attempt the jump. I managed to get it on the first try, so I'll be able to show you guys that when I eventually get past that saw path of death anyway, I should say. See, and that jump that I continually die at just after this obstacle right here is the very similar to some of the obstacles that you face on the end. Not unfair, but hard. That's a very key distinction that clearly a lot of thought went into maintaining that distinction when these levels are made. Again, if he's or she, and you never know, if they're watching, give me a shout out in the comments. I'm really pleased with the levels that you made. I think this is everything that I want to see with the Super Meat World user-created levels. So here's the jump that you've got to be perfect on. And, you know, that is exactly as hard as it looks. One of the most challenging jumps that I've faced in this Super Meat World so far. And we're really getting down to things here. We're almost at the end of the chapter, and the levels get a little bit more difficult. What I like is that I complain a little bit about the difficulty of the levels. You know, I was being a bit disingenuous. I don't mean that much. The reason that I like these levels much more than the other 2 chapters is that when they get difficult, it's not that they're like adding in more bullshit obstacles, it's just that they get longer, so you have to be more consistent. It's not about, you know, like having one jump that's almost impossible, so you can do 90% of a level that takes you a minute, and then always mess up on this one jump. As long as you can think it, you can usually do it when it comes to these. Which is good. And, you know, longer levels, it gives you a greater sense of accomplishment. To a certain extent. I hope nobody's watching this is going to create like a marathon half-hour long level. Throw my fucking computer through the screen so hard it'll break the space-time continuum. So then, another set where you've got to be pretty precise with your jumps, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, like I said, these require some precision, but not nearly as much as the other 2 chapters. Although I really like the Paradise Lost levels as well. I thought those were pretty good. Really looking forward to seeing more levels coming out for this. I get a lot of questions now and then, which you know, I'm really happy about. Questions about, like, will I play your levels when they come out? Absolutely. But the caveat is, 1, are they good? If they're good, I'll play them. And 2, how hard are they? Because sometimes they can just be prohibitively difficult. And I know that's something that a lot of people want to see. They want to see the hardest levels. Between, you know, working a full-time job, making these videos, having kind of a social life, Super Meat Boy is a really taxing game on that, as lame as it sounds, because, you know, I don't like to record my first run-throughs. I like to at least get some practice. So, you know, the average Super Meat Boy video might take me an hour or 2 of practicing the levels. But anyway, I'm digressing. See you later.